So, hello. We are going to start. So, good afternoon. A warm welcome to the second regional open consultation of the United Nations Commission on Science and Technology for Development, the CSTD, on the WSIS+20 review during the EuroDIG Forum 2024. My name is Ana Cristina das Neves, and I am the Vice Chair of the 28th session of the CSTD. Today, I will be moderating this event, and I look forward to your active participation, especially the remote participation, because physically you don't have so many persons for the time being. Hopefully, they will come inside in a few minutes. General Assembly Resolution A/70/125, adopted on the 16th of December 2015, called for a high-level meeting in 2025 to review the overall implementation of the outcomes of the World Summit on the Information Society, WSIS, known as WSIS+20 review. WSIS+20 review. The CSTD has been mandated to undertake, since 2006, annual review of the progress made in the implementation of the WSIS outcomes at regional and international levels, through engagement with the multi-stakeholders, governments, international organizations, private sector, civil society, technical community, and academia. And civil society, I already mentioned. It also played a key role in the WSIS+10 review by the General Assembly in 2015. For the WSIS+20 review, it has been requested by the ECOSOC to collect inputs from all WSIS facilitators and stakeholders to prepare a 20-year review report concerning of WSIS outcomes for discussion at the session of the CSTD in 2025. In 2025, actually from the 7th to 11th of April in Geneva. The results of the CSTD 2025 session review on WSIS will be submitted through ECOSOC to the United Nations General Assembly for its overall review of the implementation of the WSIS outcomes in 2025. The CSTD also adopted a roadmap last year, which is guiding its work on WSIS+20 review. So let's take a look at the snapshot of this roadmap. Where is it?
1 second. Somewhere. Good. Here, behind you. It is. Convenience screen on the front. Convenience screen on the front.
Okay, but you'd like to engage with the audience and not to be seated all the time. So here you can see that, so WSIS+20, we have, in our session in 2023, this roadmap was adopted. And so now we are in 2024. We didn't have a first draft on the 27th session of the CSTD, but we had an outline of what it should look like. And so, as I said, the final draft will be submitted to the CSTD from the 7th to 11th of April. It will be discussed there, and the outcomes of such discussion will be submitted to the United Nations General Assembly through ECOSOC. So for the open stakeholder consultations that we are doing until the very end of this year, so we have the national, regional, and international open consultations, and we have, of course, all the multilateral agencies on board, the technical community, the national governments, the private sector, the civil society, and academia. So this is as it looks like. I would like to emphasize that an integral part of the CSTD's WSIS+20 review is the engagement of all stakeholders in open consultations like today's and in the survey questionnaire that CSTD Secretariat are conducting until late 2024. The CSTD Secretariat has begun preparing the synthesis report. To collect inputs from the different stakeholders, open consultations are ongoing. The launch of the open consultations on the WSIS+20 review took place during the 18th Internet Governance Forum held in October 2023 in Kyoto, Japan. The second open consultation was held during the UNCTAD EU Week in December 2023 in Geneva. And the first regional consultation was held on the 22nd of May in Dubai, in collaboration between United Arab Emirates and Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia of the UN. Today's consultation marks the second among a series regional consultation that the CSTD has planned to conduct on different continents. As you know, the WSIS vision is to establish a people-centered, inclusive and development-oriented information society for harnessing the potential of information and communication technologies for sustainable development. So you will have 3 questions to respond during the open consultation. And these questions will be on the screen. So, to what extent and how has the WSIS vision in its Declaration of Principles of 2003 of a people-centered, inclusive and development-oriented information society evolved over the past 20 years since WSIS, both at global and European levels? How will ongoing trends and emerging technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, impact progress towards human development and sustainable development goals? Moreover, how can these trends enable or hinder the realization of the WSIS vision, globally and at the regional level? And how did the WSIS framework and process manage to adapt to technologies that emerged during the last 2 decades? And the last guiding question, it will be about measures that should be taken to advance international cooperation, including in terms of governance, to leverage emerging technologies for sustainable development in economic, social, environmental, and cultural dimensions. So those are the questions that we invite you to consider today. If I put them simply, the questions could be: how much progress have we made towards that vision, and what challenges remain in the way ahead, including how ongoing trends and likely new developments will affect progress towards human development in the future. The objective of today's event is to enable a candid and open dialogue drawing on the collective wisdom, perspectives, and experiences of the various stakeholders. The insights and recommendations stemming from today's interactions will undoubtedly contribute to the synthesis report to be prepared by the CSTD Secretariat, which is intended to shape substantive discussions at the CSTD WSIS+20 review sessions as mandated by the ECOSOC. So our session will be structured as follows. We'll have as keynote speaker Mr. Karolis Žemaitis, Vice Minister of Economy and Innovation from Lithuania, and as a keynote speaker, to be followed by Mr. Tomas Lamanauskas, Deputy Secretary General of the ITU. Thereafter, I will open the floor to both in-person attendees and remote participants for an open discussion under my moderation, including judicious time management. So, final note, I'd like to remind remote participants that they should request the floor through the hand-raising feature on the Zoom platform. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to invite Mr. Karolis Žemaitis, Vice Minister of Economy and Innovation from Lithuania, to deliver a keynote speech. Please, the floor is yours.
Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear Thomas, everyone, thank you very much for being in the facilities of my actually of my alma mater, of my university. Now it's not a university anymore, but as you can see, this hall might remind you of a university because I used to do a lot of exams here, to be honest. So I have mixed feelings about this auditorium. Nevertheless, I am very excited to be here today and to give a couple of sentences about our vision and how we see this whole thing developing. So it is a special privilege and pleasure to welcome you to the European Dialogue on Internet Governance, EuroDIG, in Vilnius, Lithuania. And I think it is important to emphasize that today we share a common vision to build a human-centered, inclusive, resilient, innovative, and development-oriented information society. And of course, first of all, I would like to emphasize that to effectively address the challenges and opportunities of digitalization, we follow a multi-stakeholder approach. And I'm always speaking about this magical triangle, you know, the government, private enterprises, and the society. And when it comes to society, we also have NGOs, academia, and so on and so forth. And in order to, for the whole cluster to work, we have all the three parts of the triangle to work effectively, because if we don't have the efficient governance, we will fail. If we don't have the societal engagement, the academic engagement, we won't go far. And in most of the cases, even though I'm the representing Minister of Innovation, innovations are not born in the corridors of the ministries. Innovations, in most of the cases, are born in private sector and academia and non-governmental organizations. And just to give an example of also our approach towards innovation, I would like to emphasize GovTech Lab, which helps to boost digital innovations into the public sector. And it is part of Innovation Agency Lithuania, and it helps the public sector to identify the challenges that can be addressed by means of AI or other emerging technologies, and invite innovative startups and academia to co-create solutions. Since 2019, it has worked with 70+ public sector challenges solved by 60+ innovative companies. And I think it's a good example where private sector and academia is actually, and non-governmentals are helping the governments to solve the problems, because governments are very good at creating problems, not very good at solving them. And I think that's that's why, you know, GovTech is a good bridge between the problem creators and problem solvers. And problem solvers are in the private sector and NGOs. So in this connection, also I would like to draw your attention to one of the most important recent developments in the field of AI governance, the Framework Convention on AI, Human Rights, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. Just a month ago, the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe approved the convention and decided to open it for signatures, and the signing will take place in this September in Vilnius, Lithuania, naming it the Vilnius Convention on AI. And it marks a significant achievement of Lithuania's presidency for the Council of Europe. And also, as the government representative, I must admit that, of course, we live in a, as we like to say, in a polycrisis. We live in a very turbulent times, and of course, you know, the technological developments, it always require closer scrutiny than ever before. We have been witnessing an increasing number of cyber attacks, disinformation, GPS jamming, and interference. And that's why it is crucial and important that closer cooperation within the EU and other like-minded countries is necessary to shape the digital future by putting people first, opening new opportunities for business, fighting climate change, achieving green transition, and ensuring resilient and safe digital environment, including infrastructure. So while we are here in Vilnius, also active process is happening in New York. Obviously, I refer to the Global Digital Compact and the Summit of the Future activities at the UN. Now, Lithuania has been actively engaged in these processes since the very beginning. It is a great opportunity for us to be part of future-oriented decisions, to promote human rights-based approach, mitigate the influence of non-democratic countries, and open up new opportunities for the digital economy. And of course, we have to also have in mind the Russia's unprovoked and brutal war in Ukraine, and and how it impacts also the situation in digital sphere. But for us, it is important also to ensure the support and work together with our Ukrainian friends and allies. And recent change also, it requires to build resilience. And for us, coming from a relatively small country, I think resilience building is one of the key aspects of our government and of our country. I'm always trying to compare Lithuania to a small startup. Because if you look at the big countries, I don't know, Germany, France, United States, Japan, and you compare Lithuania, in the absolute numbers, it is very hard to compete. We cannot compete in scale. And I always compare Lithuania being a small startup compared to the large multinationals, big, large countries. And I think our own and only competitive advantage is to be more flexible, more adaptive, more resilient, more bold, and more open. And when it comes to the digital infrastructure, this is the key element and the key DNA, because otherwise we won't be competitive. And we live in a very competitive neighborhood. If you look at the Nordics, you look at the Baltics, you look at the Central Europe, this is where the innovation is happening. And this is what is pushing us forward. And I know very well that 9 out of 10 startups fail. It's a risky strategy for a country to take. But in my subjective opinion, this is the only way for Lithuania to go forward, because otherwise, in a conventional ways, we cannot be competitive. And I think this is the attitude that I'm trying to implement in my team. This is the attitude that Lithuania has been taking in the last, I would say, even 30 years. And this is the attitude that we are also expecting from international institutions as well, because we are true believers of international rule of law, of international institutions. And I think you being here also proves that Vilnius and Lithuania can become one of the hubs where the brightest minds of Europe and world is meeting up to discuss the future. And I think even though, we live in the turbulent times, I think the future is bright. Sometimes people are referring to the good old times, when the good old times will be back, before pandemic, before war and everything. And I'm always telling there won't be any good old times. Good old times are over. But it doesn't mean that we cannot create our own good times in the future by being more resilient, more adaptive, more active. And this is, I think, the attitude that we have all the time to change, that, we won't get back to the business as usual, whatever that means. But we have to create new ways of working in this relatively complex world. And I think your setting also brings additional value and opportunities for good discussions and additional content. So thank you very much for being here. I congratulate you that you don't have to take any exams in these halls. Enjoy this moment and enjoy the beautiful city of Vilnius. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very interesting and insightful speech. Thank you. And now I'm pleased to invite Mr. Tomas Lamanauskas, Deputy Secretary General of the ITU, to deliver special remarks. ITU has been a key partner at the CSTD on its regular review of the progress made in implementation and follow-up of the WSIS outcomes since 2006. Mr. Lamanauskas, you have the floor. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Anna. And indeed, I think as for Carol, it's also for me homecoming as well in some ways, So I never had to take exams in this hall, but in a bit different ways. So because I was part of the Lithuanian delegation in 2005, Tunis, when we had the WSIS original summit then, in 2005. So I think now to talk here from international perspective, in Lithuania about WSIS is really a great pleasure. So indeed, and thank you very much, Anna, for making ITU part of this session. And indeed, CSTD and supported broader UNCTAD was always also a key partner, especially in your role as a focal point, UN-wide focal point for consolidating WSIS review, both 10 years ago and now. And of course, we're very proud of all our partners, including UNESCO, UNDP, and UNDESA, that were supporting us in this road as well. So indeed, looking back a little bit, and I think Deputy Minister Karolis gave great overview about where we are today, especially in Lithuania. But I think this is also part +20 means that we look 20 years back. So how far have we come? And indeed, in that time already, the WSIS community, actually, heads of state and heads of government had a foresight, actually, at the rather critical time of the internet era, to come together to agree that information society needs to serve all and reach all, and that everyone can create, access, utilize, and share information and knowledge. And we've come pretty far away. So at that time, just to remind you, in 2003, at the time of the first WSIS summit in Geneva, only 12.4% of the world's population, just a little shy of 800 million people were online. And in that time, WSIS framework, through which all the stakeholders work together, really delivered a lot to make that into substantial progress. So WSIS process strengthened actual digital inclusion, strengthened policy frameworks around the world, provided capacity building, enabled partnerships, and really increased awareness about transformative socioeconomic potential of digital technologies. Just one figure, of course, today, some 5.4 billion people, or 2/3 of the world, are online. So that's a rather big contrast of where we were 20 years ago. And of course, digital platforms are key to the modern life. What a very important legacy of WSIS is, of course, this inclusive multi-stakeholder model that we now sometimes take for granted, where really that was probably for the first time where heads of governments allowed other stakeholders to be part of the same table, and to actually realizing that all these different groups, be it civil society, be it academia, be it technical community, be it private sector, international organizations as well as every stakeholder group, also need to be on the table for the progress to happen. And since then, that model is our guiding model for the digital development. It also established clear framework. So with the Internal Governance Forum, which also Vilnius had the pleasure to host as well some years ago, and as well as WSIS Forum, which in 15 years attracted over 120,000 different participants, both online and in person. WSIS Action Lines, which encapsulate all areas of digital development and has designated UN facilitators to ensure the progress. WSIS Stock-Taking Database, which has over 15,000 submissions showcasing different projects that demonstrate how digital technology can help sustainable development around the world. And WSIS prizes that, of course, I had the pleasure also to give them out a few just a couple of weeks ago, but now we have more than 300 winners or champions out of 5,000 submissions. And then the United Nations Group on Information Society that brings more than over 40 UN agencies together and coordinate our work on digital development and cooperation. Last year, UNDP and ITU were co-chairs of that. Now we very nicely passed it to UNESCO, and we will be proud of their leadership as well. So, and this framework demonstrated the ability to adapt. So in 2015, when Sustainable Development Goals framework was adopted, we adapted that, WSIS adapted to this with a matrix that allows matching WSIS action lines and SDGs and demonstrate how WSIS is contributing to Sustainable Development Framework. Of course, there are some gaps, and I already mentioned 67% of population online. On the flip side, means 1/3 of the population is still not there. And actually, if you look at the lower income countries, only 1/3 of the population is online. So there's still quite a bit to go. Of course, there is a rapid technology evolution that a regulatory environment doesn't always catch up with. And of course, especially when we talk about AI governance, and we had another, again, great discussion in AI for Good Summit a few weeks ago, an AI Governance Day, that we need to keep adapting. It also, we see new social, ethical, legal challenges, including through the rise of social media, such as misinformation and disinformation, that needs to be tackled as well. However, this model has proven ability to adapt to these new challenges. And we had the ability to witness this power just a couple of weeks ago at the WSIS+20 high-level event 2024 in Geneva, as well as the AI for Good Summit, where we had over 8,000 participants, 6,500 of them physically in Geneva, participating in the WSIS as well as the AI for Good, including nearly 80 ministers and similar level participants. It was very great to see the lines of people circling around conference center in Geneva trying to get in. And it's really the proof, if you need any, that people want to be part of that conversation. So the comprehensive chair summary of this event, and we have Thomas Schneider around, I think, he spoke, I think, earlier today, and I'm pretty sure he'll speak further, who on behalf of SUS Confederation coordinated that, reaffirmed continued relevance of the WSIS process and suggested working on the enhanced WSIS Plus framework to ensure its relevance for the years to come. And of course, these outcomes will be very important for UN in preparation of UN Summit of the Future in September, where the world will come together to agree on Global Digital Compact, and the next year's WSIS+20 that will follow. We also had, just to mention, ITU Council, which just followed that event, so our governing body, and the ITU Council last week acknowledged the continuing importance of WSIS outcomes and actions lines to continue supporting governance issues, and the importance to ensure that Global Digital Compact and WSIS+20 review complement and reinforce each other, building on existing multi-stakeholder mechanisms like WSIS Forum and IGF, and avoiding duplication of efforts. We also had the honor to host His Excellency Secretary General Antonio Guterres in our council, who again reaffirmed the importance of the WSIS framework. And what next thing what the EU Council did, it set a roadmap for us to now contribute to CSTD and broader review in the WSIS+20, with setting out a clear process of that review, which will start actually already in August with an inclusive online platform to gather stakeholder input, and physical meetings of the Council Working Group on WSIS and SDGs in October this year and January next year, and a side event next to the WSIS+20 high-level event in 2025. So in this one, we definitely encourage you to actively participate in these processes to ensure that we take stock of the WSIS achievements so far, but also together agree on adjustments needed. I already would like to encourage you to actively participate in our with your inputs, to participate in our open consultation process that we're about to launch, and put in your calendars 9 to 13th of June 2025 for 9 to 13th of June 2025 of WSIS+20 high-level event 2025 that will consolidate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, and Anna, we're really committed to be part of that process. We think that WSIS has served the global community well in the last 20 years. We acknowledge all that it needs to be adjusted to continue serving it, and we, of course, stand ready together with our broad stakeholder community to make sure that it does so. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas, very much for your very comprehensive remarks. And as you see, so we have several open consultations. So you have more than space to feed in all these discussions, because WSIS+20 will serve you, will serve the community as a whole. Okay, this brings us to the open discussion segment of our event today. I now invite participants to feel free to contribute to present your views, your suggestions, and on the way forward. So I will ask Liping to put here the questions, but in a nutshell, what we would like to hear from you today is to put these questions in a simple way, is how much progress have we made towards that vision, and what challenges remain in the way ahead, including how ongoing trends and likely new developments will affect progress towards human development in the future. So the emphasis here is on the people-centered internet. So I will open the floor for your comments, suggestions, views, beliefs, wishes. Sebastian Bachelet. Now we have the square micro. Oops, no. Sébastien Bachelet, if you could introduce yourself, thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Anna. Sébastien Bachelet, amongst a lot of things. I am a member of EuroDIG France chapter, and I am chair of the EuroLaw European Regional at-Large Organization within ICANN. First of all, thank you for organizing this consultation, I think it's one way where the voice of the different stakeholders can be here. And I hope that what we collectively we say will go back to your work of your body, but more importantly, up to the UN General Assembly. I would like to come back on what was done, but more, I think it's important to really embed all the work done during this 20 years. And particularly, I would like to underline the fact that 2 meetings were handled in Sao Paulo for Net Mundial, and those the output of Net Mundial, who was a truly multi-stakeholder process, are very important for end user in particular. What was done 10 years ago and was just done last April was is very important, and therefore I don't know how it could be embedded in the work currently done, but it's important. My second point is that a lot of people talk about how many more people get online and how many people are still not online. I would like to have a little bit different way of saying that. It's we want to allow all the people to be online. Our goal is not to have everybody online. There are people who may wish not to be online, but they may have the possibility to be online. That's a little bit different. Therefore, the goal is to allow everybody to be online and to participate to the discussion and to the evolution of Internet. I will stop here because even if there is no clock, I think I have taken my 3 minutes. Thank you, Anna.
Up to 5 minutes, actually. So now, to whom are you going to throw it? Well, I have a suggestion. You throw it, and we'll see who is the person more close to it, and this person has to talk.
Nobody wants?
Good.
Bonjour. Anna, sorry, just maybe can I ask if you could perhaps describe very quickly what were the main outcomes of the regional consultations in Dubai before I ask my question?
I can only tell you that, well, David Fairchild from Canada, so we have to...
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Yes. And from the mission in Geneva, so I'm introduce you. What I can say from that discussion is that multi-stakeholder was not an issue, was on the contrary, and they were very supportive of the landscape that WSIS has been offering since 2003-05. Then there are some proposals who should be the guiding institution, because people, they feel that they have to have some guidance and institutional guidance and to help and to make policies. And it was a very good one and a very open session.
Thank you. I guess my question, and maybe goes to C, is this notion of governance and what is WSIS's role, and I guess what is an evolving governance landscape. And it's not so much a comment as I guess a question, and is, do the action lines themselves after 20 years remain valid? And I think this is sort of one of those key questions. In and of themselves, they may remain valid, but what's happening around the WSIS action lines has changed enormously, and I would argue enormously in the last 5 to 10 years. And so I think the challenge, and I'm fairly new to this space, but There are strong proponents of WSIS, strong proponents of the Tunis Agenda and the action lines, but as we head to 2030, I think there is a real opportunity to sit back and perhaps objectively go back to first principles and ask ourselves, as we converge on 2030 and really the digital development agenda is no longer different from development agenda, how do we look at these two parallel processes? And I think 2030 becoming a convergence point within the UN system, irrespective of what's going on right now. So I think it's really a fundamental question whether the action lines themselves, understanding that Tunis Agenda is still completely appropriate, whether the action lines and how we advance along them perhaps needs a bit of a wire brushing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I don't know who read the action lines of Geneva and who read the Tunis Agenda, but well, to foster a little bit the discussion, I think it would be important to read those documents, because well, they are still very updated in a way. The Global Digital Compact is bringing some novelties to all these themes and the agenda for the digital, and moreover, we had in 2015 the Sustainable Development Goals adopted. So the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17, to be adopted and by 2030. So we are in 2024, and we are preparing ourselves, the whole community, for the WSIS review. And after 20 years is the best place to have the whole community to think about the objectives and the governance. So we are having a lot to think about and to see how all these inputs are influencing this WSIS+20 review, and how the people-centered approach evolved. So we have nowadays a discussion about if we could talk about human-centered internet. There are some countries that they don't like the human-centric internet because it's considered by some countries that we are talking about individuality and to become very selfish. Others consider that human-centric internet comes from the Human Rights Declaration. So this is one of the things that could be discussed. And the economic development that came with the internet, as Sébastien Bachelet well said, the persons, they aren't obliged to use internet. The thing here is how internet become a tool that improved our lives, improved the economy, improved the society, or not. So these are the pillars of the societies, how they were influenced by internet, and how they should influence WSIS+20. So the floor is yours, not mine. Where is the cube? So to throw it here down. Okay, now you're okay. Now you meet.
I'm just seeking for some clarification here. Perhaps I'm not aware of perhaps the breadth. Certainly people-centered approaches. You said that there is a body of thought that regards it as being selfish, self-interest, self-serving. Is that correct? Is there a body of people who consider human-centered or people-centered or human-centric in those terms?
The argument for certain governments not to approve the use of a human-centric internet is because they claim that it will be a concept of individuality. So meaning that serves only the private sector, not the human beings.
Right.
So this is, of course, problematic, and you can discuss. You can discuss, of course, because for European, I think that a human being, human-centric internet is about me to be Anna and not a number, and you to be yourself and not a number. So it's totally different if we are thinking about persons, humans, and not numbers. We are not a number in a society. We are a person. So, and that is the impact of that internet policies nowadays, digital public policies, processes are doing. They are impacting the human being. They are impacting the society, of course. They are impacting the world. So that is one of the things that is being discussed in the Global Digital Compact as well. It's about human rights. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, no questions? No comments? Nigel, please.
We do have a question from the online platform.
And introduce yourself. Sorry, you didn't introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Bernadette Lewis from the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization.
Ah, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And Nigel Hickson, UK government, and thank you for this opportunity to take part in this regional consultation, which certainly we believe is very, very important indeed. I think it's something that the UN CSTD should do, and I look forward to how these regional consultations will contribute, as you indicated earlier, to the final reports and the resolutions that CSTD will be working on next year. In looking at your three questions, I think these are questions which we've addressed before to an extent in different fora. To an extent, they were questions that were on the ministerial agenda for the WSIS forum sessions that we had a few weeks ago in Geneva. And so our take in the UK, very briefly, is that over the last 20 years, there has been significant progress. And I don't think we can underestimate that progress. We can be cynical. We can, of course, point to the problems, to the issues. We can point to disinformation. We can point to enhanced, if you like, cybersecurity threats. We can point to the use of the internet as a surveillance tool by some authorities. So we shouldn't underestimate the problems there are, and the problems that, as someone said this morning, some of us 20 years ago wouldn't have envisaged. Perhaps 20 years ago we were over-optimistic in our sort of thought about what the internet could do. But putting that aside, what the internet has done for many countries in the last 20 years is given people a freedom, given people opportunities, given people the ability to work, to be educated, to take part in medical research, and to be able to have medical treatments that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise if there hadn't have been an internet. In many societies, the internet has enabled people, perhaps quietly, perhaps below the radar, but to have a deeper understanding of world events, to have a deeper understanding of the opportunities for them in other countries, whether it be educational, societal, or whatever. The WSIS framework has also provided countries with a national system, a national frameworks, has encouraged national frameworks to emerge, which has helped many different countries, as was discussed at the WSIS forum, to have a better understanding and use of the internet. As again we reflected this morning, 20 years ago, many of us in this room that were around at the time of the WSIS summits in 2003 and 2005 found it very difficult to engage our ministers in these areas. In some countries, ministers just didn't want to listen. Even in some countries that did use the internet, ministers were highly skeptical of the value of this emergence of the internet. Now, that is not the situation now. People are more engaged, people have better understanding, people know the significance of the internet for their countries. So this, I think, brings us on to the challenges. How will emerging technologies really make a difference? Emerging technologies will, of course, make a difference in many respects. They'll make the internet more complicated. They'll make the internet more problematical for many people. But again, they will enable many people to have better lives in terms of AI and in terms of other techniques. And finally, as we look forward, we must all recognize that this is still a people-centered internet. We must recognize in the WSIS review process that the developmental aspects of the internet, technology as important as it might be, the real issues is how people can use that technology, can benefit from that technology, and move on to create better societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a remote participant. Yes.
Yes, we did have 2 demonstrations for participation. Unfortunately, we are not able to connect them through audio, but I do have remarks from one of them, and I will read. So the points are from Lufunuti Chikalangje, and I'm sorry for pronunciation. Thank you so much, Vice Minister, for such an insightful keynote. I liked his analogy of likening Lithuania as startup. I believe most of the developing and low-income countries might be looking at themselves the same way. I would like to find out if Lithuania feel pressure to catch up on competitive or compete with the big leagues, or innovate as required by Lithuania developmental needs and within their means. How do they balance technological development with the promotion of a human rights-centered approach? Do they feel they need to follow the trends, everyone is doing it, or to meet Lithuania's tech requirements? It would be helpful to understand their approach on balancing different interests between tech development, human rights, and budgetary requirements. The statements are from Lufunuti Chikalanje, Orizer Consulting Enterprise, a cyber law consultancy based in South Africa.
Okay. Well, we thank him very much for the question. Unfortunately, we don't have the Vice Minister here any longer. I don't know if there is someone from Lithuania that would like to intervene and to respond, but personally, I think that these thoughts are exactly the ones that we would like to have for discussion here in the session today. And it's exactly those points. What are the role of small, medium, and large countries? What is the role of each stakeholder? How each stakeholder is feeling nowadays, And even if they didn't follow the WSIS inception, at least they know the impact that the internet and nowadays the so-called digital world, others call it the cyber world. So we still have to understand exactly what the terminology is. But it's part of all this discussion of this evolution of this different world that we have nowadays. Well, again, any comments, insights? Yes. Where is the cube? Nigel, could you be so kind? And over there. Ah. Leaping is helping. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Leaping. And sir, please introduce yourself first. Yes.
Hello. I'm Nilesh Maheshwari, and I'm a PhD research scholar at South Asian University, New Delhi. So, regarding these questions, so back in 2005, when we first came up with the Tunis Declaration, there were a few questions raised at that point of time as well. Those were like, what is the public policy role of the states? Second being, how do we go about the enhanced cooperation that was mentioned in the declaration? And third being that how do we define respective roles of stakeholders, taking into account the asymmetry of power, which became much more prominent as we went about the process. So 20 years later, some of these questions become much more pertinent as states are becoming much more assertive in regulatory arena, as well as we witness an increase in the sovereignty discourse, not only in authoritarian countries, but as well as in democratic states, although with different goals and different values system. So what we witnessed that increasingly there is a frustration with the status quo in terms of not coming up with the effective solution to pertinent public policy questions regarding AI, content governance, data governance, and increasingly there are calls for to have multi-stakeholder processes along with multilateral processes to work together in that sense to like come up with effective public policy solutions. So in terms of like if we look at in terms of trade agreement, people are now calling for new framework which takes into account the question of the flow of data and how do we harmonize it with the human rights implications and how do we effectively cooperate on those lines. So and despite all this, when we look back, I guess in 2016, there was the working group on enhanced cooperation on public policy issues pertaining to the internet, but it was not able to come up with any recommendations because of the complexity of the issue involved, and the states and the stakeholders just could not agree. So how do we tackle all these questions, which have been there for the last 20 years and are becoming more and more pertinent? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, you underline most of the problems or the items that we should discuss here today. May I ask you a question? What is for you enhanced cooperation?
Just coming from my understanding, the key issue here is that the issue being that the status quo has not been able to safeguard, let's say, we talk about the question of human rights to protect, and we are seeing the emergence of new source of human rights in the digital society as well, like right to be forgotten and all new sorts of human rights that we come up with and talk about. But there's this thing that in the sort of multi-stakeholder governance that we are happening, there's this status quo where a lot of public policy functions are inevitably being handed over to the private corporations, that they are coming up with the new frameworks of how our rights are implemented and get protected in the digital society. And due to that, like we see in EU, like we see this new legislations and new regulatory mechanisms like GDPR, DSA, coming up, and it's not happening only in EU but around the globe. So in that regard, I think enhanced cooperation means that somehow we have to bring together this diverse regulatory initiatives which are coming from diverse states and regional bodies, and to somehow figure out solutions to work on these key questions related to human rights and cooperation together.
Thank you very much. Enhanced cooperation was lengthily discussed in the CSTD in a working group called exactly on working group on enhanced cooperation, where all the stakeholders at the could intervene as the same as the government. So it was a very good working group of the CSTD. So, but enhanced cooperation was all about the power of governments. The power of governments on freedom of expression, on privacy, on a lot of things that impact nowadays our digital policies. So, and why it was not possible to achieve a consensus in that working group, because some countries could not accept that it will be only for governments to regulate internet. So internet has to be regulated or not. So it's still always the question. And who is really nowadays who is really influencing the internet that we consume? What is the role of the private sector? The private sector has a totally different role than they had back in 2023 and 2025. 2003 and 2005. So they have a totally different role. So we have all those online platforms, and they are making technical policies, and they are influencing a lot the society. We have nowadays the government of the United States trying to regulate some of the areas of these platforms, something that we could not imagine a few months ago. So the world is really evolving, and the power of who rules the internet is really the main question here, and how we can really influence the way we are perceiving it and we are using it, and how we are using blockchain, how we are using artificial intelligence, how we are using quantum technologies, how they are going to impact our lives, and how they are going to impact our way of work, way of being with family, way of being with our friends. So there's a lot to process. And so it's this reflection, all this, the process of all this information that we need for the WSIS+20 review. So it's to process everything that has happened since 2005 and to acknowledge it and to put it together with the Sustainable Development Goals, and to understand that the digital is everywhere, is in the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development. So we are talking about development, but are we talking only about the development of developing countries, or don't we all have lower, poor income citizens in all the countries all over the world? So what are we doing in our own countries to make things evolve and to be developed, and using always the tools that internet is offering us? So for instance, see what measures should be taken to advance international cooperation. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, his emphasis in 2019 on international, on the digital international cooperation was really an important component, an important element. And that led us to the Global Digital Compact, and that led us to the negotiation of the Summit of the Future, where digital is really a main component here. So I think that in what concerns C, what measures should be taken to advance international cooperation, including in terms of governance, to leverage emerging technologies for sustainable development in economic, social, environment, and cultural dimensions. The thing here, I think that we will agree that this is the way to go. But how? And the how is always about governance. And I don't know whether here in EuroDIG we have someone that is not agreeing with this multi-stakeholder approach and to better understand the role of each stakeholder. If people-centered is the right concept, or if it should be changed for human-centric internet. So I would like to know if there is someone that is not agreeing with these questions that are on the screen. So as I don't have anyone talking from the floor, I think that we all agree that is the way forward, and you agree with not the status quo, but you agree with the way internet governance is evolving. Of course, there are always that question. There is always that question about: are you talking about digital governance, or if you are talking about internet governance? But I think that Net Mondial +10 try to sort it out. That for the time being, we are talking about internet governance in all its dimensions, meaning the infrastructure and what is on and over the internet, and we added digital public and the digital policies processes. So it's everything that what we have nowadays to talk about. So no comments. You don't have comments on the people-centric internet, human-centric internet. Please, and introduce yourself. The cube is over there.
Thank you. Is the mic on? My name is David McCauley, and I'm employed by VeriSign, but I'm speaking in my personal capacity. And so thank you, Anna, for this. It's been interesting. I don't have a comment on the indicative questions, although indirectly my comment may deal with question C. But it's largely a process-oriented question, and it relates to what Nigel said in the immediately preceding session and Jim Prendergast about the CSTD document being changeable up till next year and the WSIS forum being affected by GDC. So it's really a comment. How concerned, or are you concerned, that in considering the WSIS forum, some of the options that you might like to consider could be closed or somewhat closed off by what eventuates in the GDC, whatever comes out in the final draft of the GDC? And I'm just wondering if the GDC should have a review itself in 1 year so that it can be coordinated with the WSIS forum, because they both deal with, there's overlapping, they overlap in what they touch on, especially with regard to the IGF. So that's really a process question. Thank you.
Now the moderator is, so you are putting questions to the moderator, and we are not having this open consultation to you. but I'm glad. I'm more than happy to react, even because we don't have so many people interested in the open consultation. But what you said brings me to say a few things. You mentioned the WSIS forum and you mentioned the IGF. The WSIS forum. I would like you to follow this if you are not familiar. But WSIS forum, it's not responding to the challenges and opportunities put in the Tunis agenda. WSIS forum is organized by United Nations specialized agencies such as UNESCO, UNDP, ITU, UNCTAD, and others. And so they respond, and there is this annual event that it's called WSIS Forum, and that the WSIS Forum does the follow-up and assess the implementation of the action lines as adopted in Geneva in 2003. In Geneva 2003, the governance and the budget and the financial questions were not sorted out. And so there was the second phase of the summit to discuss the funding issues and the governance issues. So it was not so easy, again, but it was adopted the Internet Governance Forum that doesn't respond to a specific agenda, but it has the opportunity to go to respond to immediate advance of internet and of the digital and of the cyber worlds. And we have the Global Digital Compact, and everyone is asking themselves, what is the role of the Global Digital Compact, and how where does it meet the WSIS+20 review? So that is the $1 million question, or perhaps 1 million euros. It's a question. I don't think that we will know the impact that the Global Digital Compact will have in the WSIS+20 review. So it's good that it will be in the next year. And we are waiting that, well, it will fit in the WSIS+20. But if we are agreeing in different processes of governance of AI and data in the Global Digital Compact, we will have a very different WSIS+20 review. And now we have someone in the chat. No, remote participant, right?
Lufuno, if you can hear us, yeah, you have the floor. And you're unmuted.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My contribution is that the people-centered approach is the way to go. However, I am not so sure if we have been successful in this approach. I will give an example with where I am. I'm based in South Africa. So I did a research on universal access because I needed to make a contribution in one of the forums around here. And I found that we have 13% meaningful connectivity. If we just check if there is connectivity in South Africa, it goes, I think, to over 90%. But when we look at meaningful connectivity, it comes down to 13%. So it means that we have the desire to have a people-centered approach so that we can have an inclusive information society. But the way in which development is happening, it is more like first and second economy kind of an approach that we are having. Where I am right now, it's in the city. So we have 5G, we have 4G connectivity. But if you now go to the village where I come from, we're more on the 2G, 3G connectivity. So the development is not equal. So we can say we have more digital divide widening instead of closing. And from what I saw on the WSIS document for 2003, we were supposed to be lessening the digital divide and having more digital inclusion. But I cannot say that we have achieved that so far, because I have looked at the National Development Plan, which is the NDP for South Africa. They did a 10-year review report, which reported that our levels of inequalities, poverty levels, and high employment remain so high, meaning that if we have these stages, it continues to undermine the people-centered development. The haves continues to have, and the have-nots, which is the majority, at least in our country, continue to be excluded from an information society. And when we speak about innovation, you innovate when you have the information and when you have proper connectivity and infrastructure, which is something that we do not have yet. So I believe that with the expensive connectivity services as well, we have more barriers in building an inclusive information society so far, and having universal access to technology for everyone. And we also have different languages here. So it is also another challenge that adds to the technology challenges that we have. So for me, it will be great if the WSIS +20 will also include strategies how, particularly from developing and low economy countries, can strategically build an inclusive and people-centered society in reality, not just in papers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So, in fact, what we perceive nowadays is that we are no longer talking about a digital divide, but we are talking about digital divides, and the gap is larger. And when we are talking about the digital divides, we are talking about the gender divide, we are talking about the lack of accessibility to infrastructure, and in accessing to a computer, to a laptop, so not only to mobile, but to other devices. So we have nowadays digital divides, and it has enlarged because the digital itself, it evolved a lot. So it evolved in a very speed way, and we are lagging behind several of other things. And this is very serious, and we have to take this into account, definitely. João, we have no other remote participants, so I come back to this room and to ask if you would like to make any comments. Well, if that is not the case, I think that we close the session. Yes, Sebastian, where is the cube?
Thank you very much, Sebastian Bachelet. Yeah, I wanted to also underline the question of the digital divides, because it's everywhere. When I just want to take an example of my little village in Burgundy in France, where I live. The senior people have quite a lot of difficulty to start to use internet, and nowadays more and more public services are online. Therefore, we need to set up solution to help them. But I think it's not enough. We can't just say, okay, you can come and we will explain to you how to use it. As a matter of fact, by hazard, just before the COVID, I have trained 20 senior people who were first accident to internet, and they were quite happy during the pandemic because they were able to talk with the family. If they didn't have that, how they will have spent this time and how they will have contact their family. Therefore, it's really something we need to take into account everywhere in the world and for different kind of population. And we can't say, as I heard very often, young people are born with and they know everything. No, they are born with a phone and they know how to do 2 or 3 things on their phone. But the day they have to do things for their study or for applying for any administrative things, they don't know how to do it. Therefore, we have to be careful that a lot of people within this world in developing, underdeveloped, or whatever part of the world, they need to learn. And we need to target different messages, different training, different way to do that in the future. Therefore, we are not yet, have no barrier to enter within internet, but not just only by money purposes. And once again, thank you for organizing this consultation. Anna.
Thank you very much. So if there are no other interventions, so I think that we are closing. I would like to Olympic. And please introduce yourself first.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Adam Peake again. I wanted to just...
And you are from?
As an old person. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
But
as an older person,
I'm asking you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so looking at A, the first one...
So from ICON, Adam Peake from ICON.
Yes, yeah, I'm speaking on my own behalf because I'm thinking about 2005 when I was civil society and involved in WSIS. So in the past 20 years, I remember some of the first IGFs were talking about how do we get the first billion online. Now we're talking about the last billion and a bit. So when we're talking about how has information society evolved over the last 20 years, we've evolved enormously. The internet is the infrastructure for the globe. We just have to make it a meaningful infrastructure for the globe, as Sebastian was alluding to there. So I would suggest that we should worry less about certain aspects of governance and more aspects about actually getting people connected in a meaningful way, whether it's in our schools, in our corporations, in our daily lives, so that the things that we enjoy, most of us enjoy in the West, can be enjoyed everywhere. So let's keep this movement going that has been incredibly successful over the last 20 years. Don't focus on things that aren't really making a difference, because the internet works. It absolutely works, because without it, we would not have survived the pandemic. We would be without anything without the internet for those 2 years. So focus on the things that really matter, which is meaning connectivity, helping people to get online, education, capacity building, and let's see where we go for the next 10 or 15, 20 years. It's a magnificent opportunity. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Another one now. Oops.
Hello, Lucien Castex, France, AFNIC. Wanted to bump in what Adam said. Just a few words. I quite agree that internet actually is working and delivering, and it's still under construction. So in my opinion, we have like 5 something billion people connected, 2.5 billion to go, if I'm correct, at least in ITU fact and figures last year. But also, we have an increasing number of people that encounter new form of digital vulnerabilities. And of course, with more people connected, addressing these vulnerabilities, in particular, and specific groups and vulnerable groups is quite important, including multilingualism of the internet, the creation of local content, and the ability to actually access content in your mother tongue, in your natural language. It still is a challenge today, so I wanted to stress this out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this comment as well. No more interventions. So I think it's now that I'm going to conclude. And thank you very much for your participation. And these comments will be included in the report. That's for sure. And with that, I declare this regional open consultation closed. Thank you very much.